My dad demanded I give my $50,000 savings to my stepbrother for his dream wedding, but I turned the tables. Money has a strange way of revealing who people truly are. I learned this lesson at 28, when my decade of careful saving collided with my family's entitlement. My name is Lena Carter. For 10 years, I worked double shifts, skipped vacations, and lived in a studio apartment smaller than most people's bathrooms. Every sacrifice had a purpose. $50,000 saved in an account that represented my freedom, my escape, my future. That Wednesday evening, I was reviewing flight prices to Vancouver, where I planned to start my photography business, when my father called. "Lena, we need to have a family discussion. Dinner at my house tomorrow. 7 sharp." His tone left no room for questions. Classic Robert Carter, a man who'd spent my childhood perfecting the art of making demands sound like invitations. I arrived at my father's suburban mansion exactly on time, the house purchased with his second wife's inheritance. As I parked beside my stepbrother Ryan's gleaming BMW, anxiety twisted in my stomach. Family dinners were rare, unless someone wanted something. The door swung open before I could knock. Ryan stood there, sporting his trademark smirk that had annoyed me since our parents married when I was 15. At 32, he still lived at home, working a cushy job at my father's company. "The prodigal daughter returns," he said, gesturing dramatically inside. "How's life in your shoebox apartment?" I brushed past him without answering. In the dining room, my father and his wife Margaret were already seated. The table was set with the good china, another bad sign. "Lena, honey," my father said, standing to kiss my cheek. "You're looking tired. Working too hard again." Before I could respond, Ryan's fiancée, Sophia, emerged from the kitchen. I'd met her twice before, a statuesque woman with perfect hair who worked in brand management for a luxury retail company. Her diamond engagement ring caught the light as she waved. "Everything looks lovely," I said, taking my seat. "What's the occasion?" My father cleared his throat. "We're celebrating. Ryan and Sophia have set a date for the wedding, June 15th. "That's only 4 months away," I said. "When it's right," Sophia replied, squeezing Ryan's hand. "We don't want to wait." Dinner proceeded with wedding talk dominating every moment. The venue they wanted in the Hamptons. The designer dress Sophia had her eye on. The 100-piece orchestra. With each detail, the price tag in my head grew more astronomical. When dessert arrived, my father tapped his glass with a spoon. "Now for the real purpose of tonight's gathering," he announced, looking directly at me. "As you know, I've always believed in family supporting family." The room went silent. Ryan and Sophia exchanged glances. "Ryan is my son and you're my daughter," he continued. "I want this wedding to be everything they dream of. It's going to be the event of the century." My throat tightened. I knew exactly where this was headed. "Thing is," my father said, leaning forward, "with the economy and some recent investments that haven't quite matured yet, we're a bit short on funds." "What your father is trying to say," Margaret interjected, "is that we know you've been saving up quite a nest egg." Ryan jumped in, unable to contain himself. "Dad told us you've got 50 grand just sitting in an account. We need it for the wedding." The room spun slightly. Not a request. A demand. "You want my savings?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's for family," my father replied firmly. "Ryan would do the same for you." I almost laughed at that. Ryan had never done anything for me except borrow money he never repaid. "I've been saving for 10 years, I said carefully. "That money is for starting my photography business in Vancouver." Sophia waved her hand dismissively. "You can always save up again. This is our special day we're talking about." "No," I said, the word hanging in the air like a gunshot. "I'm sorry, but no." My father's face hardened. "Lena, this isn't a request. This is about family loyalty." "Family loyalty?" I repeated. "Dad, I worked 60-hour weeks for years for that money. I lived in an apartment with no heating for 2 winters." "Oh, so dramatic," Ryan scoffed. "It's not like we're asking you to donate a kidney." "That money is my future," I said, standing up. "I won't hand it over for a one-day party." My father slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "This is exactly your problem, Lena. Always selfish, always putting yourself first." The unfairness of his words stole my breath. I'd spent my childhood watching him lavish attention and money on Ryan while I wore secondhand clothes and worked part-time jobs since I was 16. "I think we all need to calm down," Margaret said, though her eyes held the same accusation as my father's. "There's nothing to discuss," I replied, grabbing my purse. "My answer is no." As I moved toward the door, Ryan called after me. "Dad already told everyone you were contributing. The venue deposit is due Monday." I turned slowly. "You told people I was paying before asking me?" My father had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "I knew you'd agree once you understood how important this is." That's when I realized just how far they would go. They'd planned this ambush, expecting me to cave under pressure. They'd already spent my money in their minds. "Find another way," I said and walked out. The next 3 days brought a barrage of texts, calls, and even a surprise visit from various family members, all sent to convince me to do the right thing. Ryan's Instagram featured a pointed post about selfish relatives that received a flood of supportive comments. My aunt called to tell me my father had already mentioned my generous contribution at their country club. The final straw came Sunday evening. At a family gathering I hadn't planned to attend, my cousin sent me a video of my father giving a toast. "To Ryan and Sophia's perfect day," he was saying, champagne glass raised, made possible by my generous daughter Lena, who's finally learned the meaning of family. Something broke inside me as I watched their smiling faces, already spending my hard-earned money without my consent. I called my father that night. "You win," I said flatly. "I'll help with the wedding." His pleased chuckle turned my stomach. "I knew you'd come around. Family first, always." "Family first," I echoed, but as I hung up, a different truth settled in my mind. They thought this was over. They thought they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. I opened my laptop and created a new document. At the top, I typed, "The wedding sabotage plan. If they wanted my money so badly, they'd have to earn it by surviving the wedding day from hell. Of course I'll help plan the bridal shower," I told Sophia's maid of honor, Ashley, my voice dripping with synthetic enthusiasm. After all, I'm practically family now. 2 weeks had passed since my supposed surrender. The moment I agreed to fund the wedding, I transformed from family outcast to cherished insider. Suddenly, I was invited to every planning meeting, dress fitting, and tasting session. My newfound involvement wasn't generosity. It was reconnaissance. My first discovery came easily. While pretending to help Ryan organize wedding finances in my father's home office, I accidentally opened his credit card statement. "Sorry, wrong envelope," I said, sliding it across the desk. But not before seeing the balance, $47,000 across 3 cards. Interest rates at 24.99%. "No big deal," Ryan shrugged, quickly tucking it away. "Just some temporary cash flow issues." I nodded sympathetically. Wedding planning is expensive. What I didn't say, I now knew Ryan was drowning in debt while demanding my savings. Perfect ammunition. The next phase required more finesse. I created a private Instagram account and followed Sophia's friends, the ones who weren't part of her carefully curated bridal party. Through casual comments and direct messages, I pieced together an interesting picture. "Sophia seems so in love," I wrote to one college friend of hers. "Yeah, total 180 from her usual type," came the reply. "Never thought she'd go for someone like Ryan." Another puzzle piece. During a bridesmaid lunch, I strategically excused myself, leaving my phone recording in my purse. When I returned, the conversation had shifted from wedding plans to Sophia's past. "Can't believe she's really going through with it," one bridesmaid was saying. David was devastated. "David?" I asked innocently, returning to my seat. The table went silent before Ashley laughed nervously. "Just Sophia's ex-ancient history." But their expressions told me otherwise. That night, I searched social media for David among Sophia's connections. Nothing. Too thorough a deletion. Interesting. I hired a private investigator, Excessive, perhaps, but my $50,000 was worth the investment. Within a week, I had a name: David Mercer, pharmaceutical sales rep, currently living in Boston. Finding him online was easy. Making contact, even easier. I'm writing an article about modern relationships. I lied over coffee when I drove to Boston the following weekend, specifically about maintaining friendships with exes. David was handsome in a polished way, with a confidence that Ryan lacked. He seemed hesitant at first, but after I mentioned Sophia's name, claiming she'd recommended him, his demeanor changed entirely. "She recommended me?" he asked, voice tight. "That's surprising." I shrugged. "She mentioned you've managed to stay friends despite everything." David's laugh was bitter. "Friends, right. Is that what she's calling it?" I leaned forward. "Calling what?" He checked his watch, seeming to debate with himself before pulling out his phone. "You want the truth about modern relationships? Here it is." He showed me text messages from Sophia. Recent ones. The latest from just 3 days ago. "Miss you. Wedding planning is a nightmare. Wish I was there instead. Just a few more months. Then we figure us out, I promise." My heart raced. This was better than I'd hoped. "You're still together?" I said, not a question. "Not officially," David replied, running a hand through his hair. "We never actually broke up. She said dating Ryan was a career move, his father's connections in luxury retail. The engagement was unexpected." "Does Ryan know?" "What do you think?" He pocketed his phone. "Sophia says she'll end it after she makes the right contacts at the wedding. All those industry people will be there." I nodded, mind racing. "And you're okay waiting?" David shrugged. 5 years together. What's a few more months? Besides. He smiled slightly. "I'm in sales. I know an investment when I see one." I left Boston with screenshots David had sent me. Insurance, he called it, against Sophia's occasional threats to actually go through with the marriage. The ultimate weapon in my arsenal. Back home, I dug deeper into Ryan's finances. Through casual conversations with my father, I learned he'd been borrowing from the company accounts, with Dad's knowledge. The wedding expenses were already stretching them thin. Meanwhile, I played the supportive stepsister perfectly. I suggested the most expensive venue options, encouraged Sophia toward designer gowns that required multiple alterations, and recommended vendors who required large, non-refundable deposits. "You have such great taste," Sophia told me, after I convinced her to book a celebrity photographer who required payment up front. "Only the best for my brother's wedding," I replied, watching her sign the $15,000 contract. At night, I updated my plan document, organizing my intelligence into categories. Ryan's financial vulnerabilities, Sophia's secret relationship, vendor contracts and cancellation policies, family pressure points. The more I learned, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't just a wedding built on my stolen savings. It was a house of cards built on lies, debt, and delusion. My father called me that evening. "I'm proud of you, Lena," he said, his voice warm for the first time in years. "You're finally putting family first." "I've seen the light," I replied, staring at my laptop screen where David's messages to Sophia glowed. "This wedding is getting all the attention it deserves." As I hung up, I opened my bank account. My $50,000 remained untouched. I'd bought time with promises, not cash. And time was all I needed. The pieces were in place. Now I just had to watch them fall. Financial destruction requires patience, like watching a Jenga tower wobble before the final piece brings everything crashing down. "What about a champagne fountain?" I suggested at the latest planning meeting, 6 weeks before the wedding. The Palmerbrooks wedding had won, and Sophia's is going to be much more elegant, right? Ryan's eyes lit up while his credit cards practically screamed in his wallet. "Absolutely. Add it to the list." I discovered Ryan's greatest weakness, his ego. Every suggestion I made came with a subtle reminder that someone else in his social circle had done it first, and better. Competitive by nature, Ryan couldn't stand being outdone. My father frowned at the growing expense list. "Son, maybe we should consider scaling back on some." "Dad, this is my wedding," Ryan snapped. "It's once in a lifetime." He glanced at me with manufactured gratitude. Besides, Lena's covering the big stuff. I smiled sweetly, though I'd yet to transfer a single dollar. When my father inquired about the delay, I always had an excuse ready: bank transfer limits, paperwork issues, investment liquidation periods. All plausible, all lies. Meanwhile, I launched phase 2. I heard the Chambers wedding had trouble with their caterer. I mentioned casually to the event coordinator at Ryan's venue during a site visit. Something about late payments? Her eyes widened slightly. That's concerning. Oh, I'm sure Ryan's different, I said, then hesitated dramatically. Although, the seed was planted. I did the same with the florist, the rental company, the orchestra. Never a direct accusation, just enough to raise concerns. One evening, I accidentally copied the venue manager on an email thread where my father mentioned creative financing for the wedding. Another time, I left Ryan's credit report visible on my laptop when the wedding planner stopped by. 3 weeks before the wedding, the first domino fell. What do you mean they want full payment now? Ryan shouted into his phone while I pretended to review table arrangements nearby. The contract says balance due on the day. After he hung up, I feigned concern. Problem. The venue suddenly wants payment in full, up front. They claim it's policy, but it wasn't in the contract. His face was flushed with anger and something else, panic. That's odd, I said. Did something spook them? Ryan didn't answer, already dialing my father. 2 days later, the florist required full prepayment. Then the caterer. Then the photographer. All citing company policy changes or updated contract terms. All suddenly unwilling to accept Ryan's promises of payment later. I waited until a Friday night when I knew Ryan would be at his favorite upscale restaurant with Sophia and her parents to execute the next phase. I'd casually suggested the venue, knowing it was where social media influencers often dined. At precisely 8:45 p.m., I made an anonymous call to American Express's fraud department about suspicious charges on Ryan's card. By the time their appetizers arrived, his card was frozen. The text came at 9:17 p.m. Need you to transfer wedding money now. Emergency. I waited an hour before responding. At a movie. What's wrong? His reply was frantic. Card's not working. Sophia's parents watching. Humiliating. Need money tonight. Banks closed till Monday. So sorry. I responded, then turned off my phone and opened a bottle of wine. Monday morning, I transferred $5,000 to Ryan, just enough to create the appearance of helping without making a significant dent in my savings. It's all I can release right now, I explained. Investment terms. The money vanished into the black hole of overdue vendor deposits, barely making a dent. That's when I triggered the avalanche. Using a burner email account, I sent evidence of Ryan's financial troubles to every remaining vendor, including screenshots of declined payments and overheard conversations about robbing Peter to pay Paul. By week's end, the wedding planner quit, citing irreconcilable payment issues. The stationer refused to deliver the invitations without full payment plus a reliability surcharge. The baker canceled the cake order. The venue manager called Ryan directly during a family dinner. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter, but we'll need to release your date to another client unless we receive full payment by tomorrow noon. Ryan's face drained of color. That's impossible. We have a contract, which requires deposits to be paid according to schedule, she replied, her voice carrying through the speaker. We've been more than accommodating with the extensions. After he hung up, Ryan turned to me. Desperation etched on his face. Lena, I need the rest of the money. Now. My father's expression hardened. I thought you were handling the finances. I've been trying, Ryan shouted. But everything keeps falling apart. I arranged my features into concern. What about your company credit line, Dad? Just until my funds clear? My father shifted uncomfortably. That's not possible right now. An interesting response. I filed it away for later investigation. The true masterpiece of my financial sabotage plan revealed itself the following week at a catering tasting. Sophia had invited her boss, a key industry connection, to sample the menu and discuss wedding logistics. As they debated between lobster and filet mignon, Ryan's card declined. Then another. And another. System error. He muttered, face flushed. Sophia's boss raised an eyebrow. Perhaps we should reschedule? Nonsense. I interjected smoothly, reaching for my purse. I've got this. I paid the tasting fee, a small price for the priceless scene unfolding. Ryan's humiliation. Sophia's mortification. The subtle shift in her boss's demeanor. That night, I overheard Sophia on the phone through her partially open office door at my father's house. It's a disaster, David, she whispered. Everything's falling apart. Ryan's broke, his father's company is apparently in trouble, and the wedding's turning into a nightmare. A pause. Maybe we should just, sooner rather than later. I smiled as I walked away. Financial ruin was just the beginning. The public humiliation phase was about to begin, and for that, I had saved the best ammunition of all. Despite the financial chaos, Ryan refused to cancel the wedding. My father stepped in, liquidating personal assets to cover the most critical expenses. Family pride, it seemed, was worth more than financial security. See? Everything's working out, Ryan said smugly during a cake tasting rescheduled after the original baker quit. All that panic for nothing. I nodded, feigning relief. Thank goodness. I was worried the wedding might not happen. In truth, I'd expected this last-ditch rescue. My father would never allow Ryan to face public failure. But this temporary bailout only made my next move more devastating. The engagement party was scheduled for Saturday at the country club, 2 weeks before the wedding. Every friend, family member, and business associate would be there. The perfect stage. I needed the right messenger. Someone close to Ryan who couldn't keep a secret. His college roommate Mark fit the bill perfectly. You seem distracted, I said, finding Mark at the bar during a pre-wedding gathering. Everything okay? Mark sighed. Just relationship drama. My girlfriend thinks I'm too loose-lipped. I nodded sympathetically. That's the thing about secrets. They're hard to keep. I leaned closer, especially shocking ones. His eyes lit up predictably. What do you mean? I hesitated dramatically. I shouldn't say anything. It's about Sophia. Mark moved closer. You can tell me. Ryan's my best friend. That's just it, I whispered. If you're truly his friend, he deserves to know. I showed him a carefully curated selection of screenshots, enough to reveal Sophia's infidelity without exposing my source. Mark's eyes widened with each swipe. This is from last week, he gasped, staring at date stamps. I nodded gravely. I found out accidentally. I've been sick about it. Ryan needs to know, Mark insisted. I touched his arm, the picture of concern. He'll be devastated. Maybe wait until after the engagement party? Let him have one last happy celebration. Mark nodded reluctantly, promising discretion. I knew he'd last 48 hours, maximum. He lasted 22. By Friday night, whispers circulated through Ryan's friend group. I tracked the rumor's progression through social media, subtle status changes, cryptic posts, private message requests from people fishing for details. At the country club Saturday evening, the tension was palpable. Ryan seemed oblivious, playing the proud groom-to-be, while his friends exchanged glances behind his back. Sophia moved through the crowd with practiced grace, though I noticed her checking her phone frequently. Such a beautiful couple, my father said, watching them pose for photos. They certainly project the right image, I replied carefully. The evening progressed according to schedule until the champagne toast. Ryan's best man clinked his glass, gathering everyone's attention. To Ryan and Sophia, he began, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. I slipped away, positioning myself near the club's side entrance. Right on cue, the door opened and David Mercer walked in. Our arrangement had been simple, $10,000 for a 5-minute appearance. A small price from my savings for the chaos it would cause. Sophia saw him first. The champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. David, she gasped, the name echoing in the sudden silence. Ryan turned, confusion crossing his face. Who's David? No one answered as David approached, his expensive suit and confident stride drawing every eye. "Sorry I'm late," he said smoothly. "Traffic from Boston was terrible. What are you doing here?" Sophia hissed, panic replacing her usual poise. Ryan looked between them. "Sophia, who is this?" I stepped forward, the concerned sister. "Ryan, maybe we should discuss this privately."
"No," he snapped.
"What's going on?" Mark, drunk on champagne and drama, couldn't contain himself. "It's him, man. The guy she's been seeing behind your back." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Sophia's face drained of color as she grabbed David's arm, trying to pull him away. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" I interrupted, my voice carrying. "Because it looks exactly like what those text messages suggested." All eyes turned to me. "What text messages?" Ryan demanded. I pulled out my phone with rehearsed reluctance. "I didn't want to be the one to show you these." The screenshots displayed on the large TV screen connected to my phone told the story better than any explanation could. Intimate conversations, plans for their future, Sophia's dismissive comments about Ryan and the wedding. "When were these from?" Ryan asked, his voice hollow. "The most recent?" I scrolled theatrically. "Yesterday." Sophia lunged for my phone. "These are fake. She's trying to ruin everything." "Are they fake, David?" I asked calmly. He looked at Sophia, then at Ryan, then around the room filled with stunned faces. Whatever he saw made him recalculate his position. "I'm sorry, man," he said to Ryan. "She told me it was just for her career. That after the wedding." Ryan's fist connected with David's jaw before he could finish. David stumbled backward as security rushed forward. Sophia screamed, caught between them. Cameras flashed as country club members captured the meltdown. My father grabbed my arm. "What have you done?" he hissed. I met his gaze steadily. Nothing compared to what they did. As security escorted a bleeding David out, Sophia fled to the ladies' room, and Ryan downed a full glass of whiskey. I stood in the center of the destruction I'd created. The engagement party dissolved into chaos, guests whispering in corners, family members arguing loudly. Sophia's parents huddled in grim conference. "You planned this," my father accused when we were momentarily alone. I didn't deny it. "Consider it my wedding gift." "This isn't over," he warned. I smiled. "You're right. The wedding's still 2 weeks away." Despite everything, the humiliation, the exposed affair, the public meltdown, Ryan insisted the wedding would proceed. His pride wouldn't allow him to admit defeat. Perfect. Because I was just getting started. The final 2 weeks before the wedding unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. The engagement party scandal had spread across social media, with hashtag #SophiaFair trending locally. Ryan's friends released the video of the confrontation, which got picked up by a gossip blog covering socialite weddings. Sophia managed to convince Ryan that David had exaggerated their relationship. "It was just flirting," she insisted during a family dinner. He became obsessed. Those texts were taken out of context. Ryan, desperate to save face, chose to believe her. My father backed him up, claiming young men like David often fabricated relationships with beautiful women. I almost admired their collective delusion. "You still don't believe her, do you?" my father asked me privately after dinner. "Does it matter?" I replied. "The wedding's still happening." He studied me suspiciously. "You've changed, Lena." "No," I corrected him. "I've finally learned what you taught Ryan all these years. Take what you want and ignore everyone else's needs." The morning of the wedding arrived sunshine bright and deceptively perfect. I'd been summoned to Sophia's suite at the hotel to help with last-minute details, code for "We need your money for unexpected expenses." Sophia sat at the vanity in her silk robe, makeup artist working on her face, when I arrived. "There she is," she said, smiling tightly. "My future sister." The room buzzed with bridesmaids and wedding planners, all pretending the last 2 weeks hadn't happened. "Any final surprises I should know about?" Sophia asked me, her tone light but her eyes hard. I smiled innocently. "It's your wedding day. I'm sure it will be unforgettable." At that moment, her phone chimed. She glanced at it, then quickly tucked it away, but not before I spotted David's name on the screen. Interesting. The affair was still ongoing. I excused myself to check on the venue and drove to the beachfront property where dozens of workers rushed to prepare for the afternoon ceremony. The wedding planner spotted me and hurried over, panic evident in her forced smile. "Miss Carter, thank goodness. We have a few situations." The first situation was the flowers, or lack thereof. The replacement florist had sent white lilies instead of the specified peonies and roses. "Lilies are funeral flowers," the planner explained. "The bride will be furious." The second situation was the catering staff. Half of them hadn't shown up. The third was the string quartet, who had just called to say they were canceling due to a scheduling conflict. I affected appropriate horror while internally checking items off my list. 3 calls from my burner phone the previous night. One promising the florist double payment to switch to lilies, one to the catering agency offering cash for staff to call in sick, and one to the quartet's lead violinist with fake evidence that the event was a front for money laundering. "What about the officiant?" I asked innocently. The planner's eyes widened.
"Why?"
"Have you heard something?" I merely raised an eyebrow and waited. 10 minutes later, her phone rang. The officiant had food poisoning and wouldn't make it. I suppressed a smile. The breakfast delivery to his hotel room had been expensive, but worth every penny. "Everything's falling apart," the planner moaned. I patted her arm. "I'll handle it. Just don't tell Ryan or Sophia yet. They have enough stress today." My father arrived at the venue an hour later, looking haggard. I intercepted him at the entrance. "We have problems," I told him. "More problems." He loosened his tie. "The photographer just canceled. Said he received an offer from Vogue he couldn't refuse." Another item checked off my list. The fake Vogue email had been one of my more creative touches. "Dad, I'm worried this wedding is cursed," I said, wide-eyed with fake concern. He glared at me. "This isn't a coincidence, is it, Lena?" Before I could respond, his phone rang. The color drained from his face as he listened. "What do you mean payment issue?" he demanded. "I wired the final payment yesterday." When he hung up, he looked shell-shocked. "The venue claims they never received our payment. They've given us 1 hour to resolve it or they're canceling." I feigned outrage while mentally thanking the hacker I'd paid to intercept and redirect the wire transfer. By the time the bank traced it, the wedding would be long over. "Maybe we should postpone," I suggested gently. "Absolutely not," my father snapped. "Ryan would be humiliated. We've already lost too much face over that engagement party disaster." As they scrambled to resolve one crisis after another, I slipped away to execute the final blow. I found Ryan in the groom's suite, already half-drunk on expensive scotch, his groomsmen playing cards to distract him from the ceremony delays. "Can I talk to you privately?" I asked. Once alone, I handed him my phone. "Ryan, I'm sorry, but you need to see this." On the screen was a time-stamped text conversation between Sophia and David from that morning. "After today, everything will be different. 2 more years in this sham marriage is all I need to make the right connections. D, you sure you want to go through with this? Even after the party? Ryan's family has money problems, but connections I need. His pride won't let him cancel. Just be patient. D, love you. Call me tonight after the reception? Always." Ryan stared at the screen, his hands shaking. "When was this?" "This morning," I said softly. "I thought you should know before you say your vows." He threw his glass against the wall, shattering it. "Is this real? Not another setup?" I held his gaze. "I wish it wasn't." Ryan stormed out of the room, heading for Sophia's suite. I followed at a distance, watching as he pounded on her door, demanding entry despite bridesmaids' protests. When the door finally opened, the shouting was loud enough to draw guests from their rooms. Accusations flew. Sophia denied everything, then accused Ryan of spying, then broke down crying when he showed her the messages. "It's not what it looks like," she insisted. "It never is," he replied coldly. Security arrived as the confrontation spilled into the hallway. Hotel management threatened to evict the entire wedding party. Guests filmed the meltdown on their phones, the ultimate society wedding transforming into a viral disaster in real time. Amid the chaos, I received a text from the venue manager. They were officially canceling due to non-payment and the reported disturbance. I slipped outside to the garden where the ceremony was supposed to take place in less than an hour. Workers were already removing chairs and dismantling the flower arch. "What's happening?" my father demanded, finding me there. I showed him the cancellation notice from the venue. "It's over, Dad." As if to emphasize the point, Sophia burst from the hotel in her robe, mascara streaking her face, shoving past guests to reach her waiting car. "Tell Ryan it's off," she screamed before slamming the door and speeding away. My father stared after her, then at the half-dismantled wedding setup, then at me. "Are you happy now?" he asked quietly. I looked around at the beautiful destruction I'd created and finally answered honestly.
Yes.
I am. The wedding that never was became the scandal of the season. Video clips of Ryan and Sophia's hallway confrontation circulated widely, each sharing adding another nail in the coffin of their reputations. Local gossip columns dubbed it the Carter catastrophe, with think pieces analyzing the spectacular implosion of what was supposed to be the social event of the year. I watched it all unfold from a comfortable distance, having retreated to a small Airbnb outside the city the day after the wedding disaster. My father called 17 times before I finally answered. "We need to talk," he said, his voice ragged. We met at a quiet diner halfway between the city and my temporary hideaway. He looked as if he'd aged a decade in 3 days, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot, designer suit replaced by wrinkled khakis and a polo shirt. "You orchestrated all of it," he said without preamble. Not a question, but a realization. The vendor problems, the venue payment, even Sophia's affair. "Not the affair," I corrected him. "That was all Sophia. I just made sure everyone knew about it." He rubbed his eyes. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Saved $50,000? This isn't a joke, Lena." He slammed his hand on the table, causing nearby diners to turn. Lowering his voice, he continued, "Ryan is a wreck. He hasn't left his room in days. And the company." He stopped abruptly, but I'd already connected the dots. "The company's in trouble, isn't it? That's why you couldn't bail Ryan out completely. That's why you needed my money." My father's silence confirmed it. "How bad?" I asked. "Bad enough that the wedding connections were our last hope. Sophia's father has ties to investors we desperately needed. With this scandal?" He trailed off. For a moment, I felt a twinge of regret. Not for Ryan or Sophia, but for the employees who might lose their jobs. Then I remembered my decade of sacrifice while Ryan received endless handouts. "You chose Ryan over me for years," I said quietly. "You demanded my savings for his fairy tale wedding while he was drowning in debt. Actions have consequences, Dad." He looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "When did you become so ruthless?" I smiled sadly. "I learned from the best." We sat in silence until the waitress brought our coffee. I stirred mine slowly, watching the cream create patterns before disappearing. "What happens now?" my father finally asked. "Ryan called me yesterday," I said. "Did you know he's trying to sue Sophia for the money he spent on the wedding?" My father winced. "That's not going to work." "No, it won't," I agreed. Just like demanding my savings didn't work. Another long silence stretched between us. "Your Aunt Martha called me," he said eventually. "She said I should be ashamed for trying to take your money." "So, did your Uncle James?" "And my golf partner. And the Hendersons." He looked bewildered. "Everyone's taking your side. Because they know what you did was wrong," I replied simply. He nodded slowly, the fight gone from him. "I was wrong. I see that now." The admission surprised me. Robert Carter rarely admitted fault. "I'm sorry, Lena," he continued, voice thick. "For the wedding. For always favoring Ryan. For not seeing your worth." The apology, the one I'd waited years to hear, landed differently than I'd imagined. Instead of satisfaction, I felt a quiet sadness for all the wasted years. "I'm leaving," I told him. My flight to Vancouver is tomorrow. He didn't try to stop me. Will you ever come back? I don't know, I answered honestly. We parted with an awkward hug and promises to stay in touch that both of us knew might never materialize. Ryan texted me that evening. You ruined everything. Hope you're happy. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Sophia disappeared from social media, reportedly moving back to Boston. David's Instagram showed them together 2 weeks later, both smiling as if the wedding debacle had never happened. My father's company announced a restructuring the following month. Ryan took a position at a former competitor's firm, a significant step down in prestige and salary. My father sold their mansion and moved to a condo, humbled by financial reality for the first time in decades. As for me, I woke early on my departure day, checking my bank account one last time. My $50,000 remained intact, every penny accounted for. The revenge had cost me some smaller amounts: David's appearance fee, the hacker, strategic bribes to vendors. But my future fund remained essentially whole. At the airport, I received one final text from my father. I understand now why you did it. I hope you find what you're looking for. Your mother would be proud of your strength. The mention of my mother, gone 15 years now, brought unexpected tears. She had taught me to stand up for myself before cancer took her, leaving me with a father who never quite figured out how to raise a daughter without her. As the plane took off, I watched my hometown shrink beneath me, the past growing smaller with each passing second. I hadn't just protected my savings, I'd broken free from patterns that had defined my life for too long. In Vancouver, I rented a small studio apartment with a view of the mountains. I registered my photography business and landed my first client within a week. At night, I walked along the seawall, breathing air that felt somehow cleaner than what I'd left behind. 3 months later, an envelope arrived from my father. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a simple note. This doesn't make up for everything, but it's a start. This is yours. It always was. I deposited the check, doubling my savings. Not because I needed it anymore, but because accepting it felt like the final acknowledgement of a truth I'd fought to defend. The wedding that never happened had freed us all, in different ways. Ryan from a marriage built on lies. Sophia from a charade she didn't want. My father from his blindness. And me? I was free from expectations that were never mine to fulfill. Sometimes revenge doesn't just settle scores. Sometimes, if you're lucky, it clears the path to something better. I picked up my camera and stepped outside into the bright, clear day. Time to focus on what lay ahead.